see if we can get them started.
So good guy, Reuben Bresler. I haven't seen him around for a while, but it's real sweet to see him in the feature match area. Happy to see him doing so well at 10-3. And Lantern Control is a pretty sweet, but also pretty weird deck. It's one of these prison-style decks, and it's actually looking to mill the opponent out. Bernie, when playing this Crixus Control deck, though, it's similar to the Kevin Jones deck that we saw recently, except Bernie has traded out his Delver of Secrets for Ancestral Vision. So Bernie is full on to the control plan. And notably, Bernie actually has access to, I believe, 3 Kolaghan's commands in his main deck. That, along with the 4 Cryptic commands, is going to give him a lot more interaction against Reuben than Reuben is used to dealing with. A lot of people don't actually play that many cards that can destroy artifacts, but Bernie's going to be able to have them in abundance, especially with his Snapcaster mages. So I think this is going to be a bit of a tricky matchup for Reuben, but we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, in addition to the Kolaghan's command and the Cryptic commands, Bernie also has an Engineered Explosives, which set on 1 has the potential to be very, very potent in this matchup there against Lantern.
Yeah, it looks like Bernie is actually pretty well set up to do this. There's still going to be some play in the matchup, but generally speaking, Reuben's going to be looking, to cards like Ensnaring Bridge to hold off an offense, but that's not really what Bernie's going to be looking to do to win the games by simply attacking. And when he does want to attack, he's probably going to be able to easily remove that Ensnaring Bridge from play with one of his artifact removal spells.
Now, Reuben's Lantern deck is a little different than what we normally see. It looks like a lot of people have started adopting a couple of Glint Nest Cranes, but Reuben actually has 1 copy of Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas in his deck.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just got to get him dead, and Tezzeret's generally very good at that when you have a bunch of artifacts on the battlefield.
Yeah, and it's a great card to have in your deck in general, stylistically speaking, because normally this Lantern Control deck is just a very, very, very slow, grindy sort of deck. And having something that can win the game early, not only does it help you avoid getting draws, it also makes it so that you don't necessarily have to beat every single card your opponent has in their deck. You just need to beat most of them.
Okay, so it looks like our players have finished up their die roll. They're finishing up shuffling decks.
In some of the matchups we've seen today, I've sort of harped on who's on the play and who's on the draw being a pretty defining factor. But this is a matchup where play and draw will matter, but not nearly as much as in some of the other tempo-orientated situations. So I would expect that it's mostly going to come down to what cards are in the top 15, 20 slots of each player's library. It's not actually going to come down to tempo very much.
What's interesting is both players have Sun Droplet in their sideboard.
Really?
Not often do you get to see the old Sun Droplet mirror in Modern.
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre.
Well, Bernie is going to be on the play. He's going to start off here with a Polluted Delta. He's going to fetch and shock himself down to 17 to get ace.
And if we see an Ancestral Visions here, that would be great for Bernie. Next best thing, Serum Visions.
Looks like it would just be a Serum Visions. He'll draw a card and then scry 2. Let's see where he decides to put those.
And Reuben does have a little bit of discard that he can put to some good use in this matchup to potentially clear the way for some important permanents. And on the other side, Bernie does have a few copies of Mana Leak in his deck that are also going to care about being cast in the early parts of the game. Actually, excuse me, Bernie doesn't have Mana Leak. He actually has some Counter Squalls instead.
So Reuben is going to start off here with a Blooming Marsh and an Inquisition of Kozilek. This is going to reveal Blood Crypt, Watery Grave, Polluted Delta, Creeping Tar Pit, Counter Squall, Serum Vision.
And a pretty mana-heavy hand. This is a hand that, let's say Bernie was up against Affinity, which we had seen last round. He could potentially get blown out, but in this matchup, it's just such a slow matchup, and it's going to take a little while for Reuben to get his shop set up where he can start filtering Bernie's draws. But Bernie's going to have some time to just, filter his draws with Serum Visions and hit his land drops, and he'll be fine.
So it looks like Reuben is going to take the counter squall with his Inquisition of Kozilek and pass the turn back to Bernie Wen. Let's see what Bernie has. He's going to lead off with a Serum Vision. He'll draw a card and then scry 2. Let's see where he decides to put the 2 from the scry. 1 on top and 1 on bottom.
And Bernie's likely to just bottom any land that he sees and keep anything that's mildly useful.
And he will shock himself down to 15 for a Watery Grave and suspend an Ancestral Vision with 4 time counters on it.
So what's nice for Reuben is he knows anything that he plays on these upcoming turns is likely to resolve. Until that Ancestral Visions comes off of its counters and gets cast, it's unlikely that Reuben is going to face any disruption. So now is the time that he's going to have an opportunity to resolve some of his key pieces, and hopefully he can.
So Reuben is going to lead his turn off with an Ancient Stirrings. Let's see if maybe he's looking for land, looking for more action. Oh, he's just going to take a Lantern of Insight.
Lantern number 1 from the Lantern control deck.
Here we have an Inventor's Fair for Reuben.
Yep, a new addition from the last set. This is notably something that will help pad Reuben's life total, and I believe you can use it to search for an artifact as well.
You can if you control 3 or more.
And this deck has a lot of those, so it should not be difficult for it to enable.
All right, so Bernie is going to start off. He'll draw the Thought Scour that was revealed on top of his deck. Ancestral Vision is down to 3 counters.
And this is going to give Reuben a lot of information about what he needs to play around with, since he was able to see Bernie's hand, and now he's going to see most of Bernie's draws, if not all of them. Reuben's going to be able to operate with complete information. Inventor's Fair is a pretty sweet card. I would imagine that it has implications potentially in all formats. There's a very low cost to playing it. It can actually be a benefit in a lot of situations to have a land that produces colorless mana. And just having lands that do things is always something of value. And wow, what a card to see on top. Reuben wants to get that Kolaghan's Command off of Bernie's library as soon as he can, if possible.
Right, Bernie is going to shock himself down to 12.
And Kolaghan's Command is just one of Bernie's standout cards in the matchup. Able to kill an artifact and potentially make Reuben discard a card is a huge deal.
All right, so Reuben is going to draw a card. He's going to reveal a Gluttonous Crane on top of his deck, play a Glimmer Void, and then Inquisition of Kozilek, Bernie Wen yet again.
And Bernie had... it looks like he had the opportunity to just cast Serum Visions to draw that, but maybe I'm getting my my sequencing wrong on that.
Yeah, if he cast Serum Visions, he would draw the Kolaghan's Command and then scry.
Yeah.
Decided to not. Reuben will take these Serum Visions from his hand and leave Bernie with 2 lands and a Thought Scour.
And Reuben really wants a way. There we go, Codex Shredder.
There is a Codex Shredder from Reuben. In response, Reuben is going to mill, or Bernie will mill Reuben for 2, and then draw a card with his Thought Scour.
And this Codex Shredder was Reuben's way to deal with that Kolaghan's Command. I'm a little surprised that he took the Serum Visions instead of the Thought Scour, knowing that he was going to follow up with the Codex Shredder, but I guess he's willing to lose one of his artifacts and just wants to give Bernie less control over the top of his own deck.
Well, to be honest, it's likely that he may have just forgot that Bernie could have milled Reuben instead of himself.
That is potentially true also.
All right, well, Reuben is going to Ghoul Caller's Bell both players, and then Codex Shredder himself.
And here we see Reuben trying to ensure that he doesn't draw a land for his turn, but that Bernie does draw a land for his turn. And this is one of the ways that the Lantern control deck establishes a certain level of control, is by being able to see the tops of each library and then manipulating the top of each player's library to essentially make it so that people are only drawing what Reuben wants them to draw.
So Reuben has played in Ensnaring Bridge and then passed the turn back to Bernie. Bernie will draw a land for his turn and reveal a Tassiger, the Golden Fane, on top of his deck. He's just going to play a Polluted Delta and pass the turn back to Reuben.
And normally, seeing a random creature on top of his opponent's library is something that Reuben isn't particularly worried about with a card like Ensnaring Bridge in play. But Reuben knows that Bernie has the capability of destroying that Ensnaring Bridge, and also if Tasker does get into play, Bernie can potentially start activating it, not only to generate card advantage, but also give Bernie some control over the top of his own library. So I suspect, if possible, Reuben will want to find a way to make it so that this Tassiger does not get put into play.
All right, so it looks like Reuben is going to Collective Brutality Bernie Wen, assuming he's going to choose to pick an artifact or an instant or sorcery from his hand.
Yeah, and it looks like Reuben, he knows that Bernie has that Kolaghan's Command, and Reuben just wants to get rid of that Kolaghan's Command as soon as possible before he decides what to do next.
It's also very nice that he picked up a backup copy of Ensnaring Bridge here.
Yeah, for sure.
Kolaghan's Command is going to take care of Ensnaring Bridge and make Reuben discard the other copy of Ensnaring Bridge.
So a lot of times Ensnaring Bridge is one of the pivotal cards in a matchup because it can just completely blunt an opponent's attack. But in this case, there's no creatures on the board as of yet. And it looks like Reuben's making each player put the top card of their library into their graveyard, and Bernie's going to be cracking his fetch land in response to hopefully save his Tassiger from getting put into the graveyard.
Right, Bernie will fall down to 11.
And this is why I wasn't too worried about Reuben losing his Ensnaring Bridge, because there just aren't any creatures on the board yet.
Oh, there is that Creeping Tar Pit on Bernie's side.
Yep. But that's still a relatively slow and mana-intensive clock.
Alright, so Ancestral Vision will resolve. Bernie's going to draw 3 cards. We're going to see a Spell Snare, a Terminate, and a Lightning Bolt.
So a great hand if Bernie was against a creature deck, but against Reuben's creature list deck, cards like Terminate and Lightning Bolt are not at their best. And because Reuben's at such a high life total, the option of burning Reuben out with Lightning Bolts is something that might come into play, but not until the very far future.
All right, so Bernie is just going to suspend an Ancestral Vision, fire up the Creeping Tar Pit, and attack Reuben for 3. That will knock him down to 19. Right, Reuben's going to Codex Shredder. And he does have 2 draws here, one from the bauble.
Mm-hmm. And we see here Reuben is choosing not to use the Ghoul Caller's Bell because he would like to make it so that Bernie draws that land rather than some other action spell.
So he's got a Lantern and another Codex Shredder. And there is a Tezzeret, Agent of Bolus, on top of his deck. He does need 1 more mana to be able to play it, though.
Yeah, it is a pretty sweet draw. And he knows that the Tezzeret, if cast, it will resolve because Bernie only has a Spell Snare as his counterspell.
Right, Creeping Tar Pit is going to get into the red zone, bring Reuben down to 17. Bernie just has another land, and he'll pass. Codex Shredder is going to get rid of the Tassiger on top of Bernie's deck.
Another Kolaghan's Command goes to the graveyard.
Ooh, and Ghoul Caller's Bell is also going to mill away that Tezzeret. He does have a Codex Shredder, and once he hits 4 lands, I believe it's only 4 mana to activate Shredder to rebuy something. It might be 5.
Yeah,
looks like it is 5.
The fact that Reuben is milling each player for 1 so frequently, it's asymmetrical for multiple reasons. The one obvious reason is that Reuben gets to have control over who draws what, but in addition to that, Reuben is able to get cards back from his graveyard.
All right, this tar pit is just going to keep putting in work. It's got Reuben down to 15.
Yeah, as soon as Reuben starts getting to the down to like 12 or 9 life, that's when he needs to start worrying about a number of lightning bolts and snapcaster mages finishing him off. So while I wasn't afraid of this creeping tar pit before, as each turn goes by, it becomes a little bit more of something that you need to have on your list of things to deal with.
It should only be doing 2 damage, though, as Reuben should be gaining 1 life from his Inventor's Fair each turn. As long as he remembered. Looks like he did miss it this turn. Well, there's a Ghoul Caller's Bell. The top of his deck should be revealed. There we go.
And now Reuben's got a clock.
Well, Bernie has a lot of removal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bernie also doesn't have very many targets for said removal spells.
Terminate will take care of the Gluttonous Crane.
Another thing that we need to acknowledge about the burnout plan from Bernie is Reuben can use that Tezzeret to gain some life potentially. Even though it's in his graveyard, can potentially gain it back with those Codex Shredders.
So Bernie accidentally saw the card below the terminate.
So a minor mishap. These things frequently happen. I'm sure the judges will resolve this. But as we stand, I feel like this is pretty favorable for Reuben. He's been able to make it so that Bernie really doesn't have a whole lot to work with. He's got this creeping tar pit, but I think for the most part this is going how Reuben wants this matchup to go.
Yeah, if he can find another ensnaring bridge, it will definitely help. But he also just has 2 Pithing Needle to stop the creeping tar pit, or something like Crucible of Worlds would allow him to just start playing lands out of his graveyard and eventually get to a point where he can start rebuying things with Codex Shredder.
Yeah, he also has another Inventor's Fair that he could draw to help gain even more life. He also has Academy Ruins, which would be able to put Ensnaring Bridge back on top of his library.
I believe the Inventor's Fair is legendary.
Ooh, so you can't have multiples of those.
Not going to be able to have multiples. All right, well, there's another.
And there is that
Fair,
other Inventor's Fair.
And it will be milled.
And you can see as these Codex Shredders are starting to appear in multiples on the battlefield, Reuben is able to cycle through multiple potential draws to get exactly the one he wants.
And he does have 2 copies of Academy Ruins in his deck.
Yep. So now he's up to 4 mana. So if he were to return that Tezzeret to his hand, he does have enough mana to cast it now. Bernie will be getting another windfall of cards, though.
Mm-hmm.
And he's starting to whittle down Reuben's life total.
There is another Codex Shredder. He's going to mill himself. And there's an Ancient Stirring, so he'll keep that.
And I like milling the Codex Shredder just because Reuben already has a few of those. Instead of finding the stuff that slowly finds him stuff, he wants that action now. And Ancient Stirrings is something that can find him something very valuable.
Well, and there's the Pithing Needle, which is going to allow him to stop that creeping tar pit from doing anything crazy.
And resolving this before that Ancestral Visions comes onto the stack is a pretty nice boon for Reuben. If this Pithing Needle had happened a turn later, it might have been countered by something like Cryptic Command or Snapcaster Mage.
All right, so Bernie is going to get a land, a Lightning Bolt, and another Ancestral Vision off of his Ancestral Vision.
Yeah, and pretty unfortunate for Bernie. He's got 6 points of burn, so he can knock Reuben down to 5. But with Reuben gaining a life every turn and having that Pithing Needle locking down the creeping tar pit, Reuben is likely going to be sitting in a pretty comfortable position for quite a while.
All right, Bernie will draw his land for the turn. All right, there's an Ancestral Vision.
And you see Bernie drawing a lot of cards, but a lot of them just don't matter. This Grixis control deck, it's set up to control other creature decks for the most part.
All right, and Reuben is going to draw the Mox Opal, so that now he can cash in a Codex Shredder for something like Tezzeret and just try and put this game away.
Yeah, and Reuben knows what he needs to play around. He knows that Bernie doesn't have any counter spells, but Bernie could use the 2 lightning bolts to potentially kill the Tezzeret once it comes into play, but at least Reuben will be able to get an activation out of it.
So Bernie's going to respond to the Ghoul Caller's Bell activation with a fetch. That's going to knock him down to 10. All right, he's going to mill a Snapcaster that was already there. I believe Reuben, was there another Mox Opal underneath his?
Reuben also has to mill himself.
And there's the Codex Shredder is going to hit Bernie. Shredder will hit Bernie again.
So I think this is a good turn for Reuben to consider getting his agent back.
Oh, he's just going to
Oh, nice.
Inventor's Fair and likely going to go find a Crucible of Worlds so he can just replay the Inventor's Fair.
Yeah. As well as all the other lands in his deck. So now he'll be able to play a land basically every turn without having to draw a land. So this is close to having a Howling Mine, which would allow him to draw an extra card every turn. The caveat is he has to draw an extra land as his second card.
And there is another Pithy Needle. We've got Crucible of Worlds will resolve. Likely just going to play either Inventor's Fair or Academy Ruins here.
Yeah, I like getting Inventor's Fair because that is an upkeep trigger, and Reuben doesn't have enough mana to activate Academy Ruins even if he got it, and he'll still have an option to do so on the following turn.
All right, so they're going to... He'll Codex Shredder away the Serum Visions. He's going to Ghoul Caller's Bell. Bernie will fetch in response to the bell.
You know, we've gotten to see a lot of really explosive decks this weekend, but this is a little bit of a snooze fest. Definitely one of our slower matchups where, you know, there's no sweet combat math going on, but these are still sweet decks, and this is what's great about Magic, is you really get a large diversity of things going on.
All right, so Bernie's going to draw his Scalding Tarn, and he'll play it.
And this Lantern deck is so frustrating to play against because not only is it slow, and it just spends a lot of time kind of doing nothing, but when you're playing against it, you end up in these situations where all you've drawn is lands because that's all they let you draw. You don't even get to do your stuff. It's not even like you drew your cards and they countered them. You don't even get to draw them.
So Reuben is just going to play his Bauble and a Botanical Sanctum and pass the turn back. Ancestral Vision goes down to 1.
Wow, and Bernie's at 9?
Yes,
that's a lot of damage.
From all of his fetches and shocks.
Yeah.
Codex Shredder is going to get back with a Spellskite.
I feel like one of the things that Bernie could do is he could build up a critical mass of fetch lands so that he has more fetch lands than Reuben has ways to affect the top of Bernie's library, and try to leverage that on one turn to get one good draw step.
Mm-hmm.
It'd still just be an outside shot at drawing something good, but at least it's something you could do.
All right, so he's going to tap an Opal, play another Opal. He's going to try and play the Spellskite. He knows Bernie has a Spell Snare, though.
Yeah, and Bernie's probably dying to have a target for it. Bernie probably wonders if this is some sort of trap. But Spellskite is pretty good. One of the things that Reuben's most worried about is Bernie drawing something like a Kolaghan's Command or a Snapcaster Mage to flak back Kolaghan's Command, and Spellskite would give him protection from that draw.
Reuben is activating Ghoul Caller's Spell. Bernie is going to fetch and response. And there's Snapcaster Mage back on top. He will fetch again in response.
I'm a little surprised that he doesn't want to just draw the Snapcaster Mage. He has Kolaghan's Command in his graveyard.
Well, this is like in response to the Ghoul Caller spell.
Oh, I understand. So he's shuffling it so that it doesn't get milled.
All right, another Ghoul Caller spell.
And it looks like Bernie's library is getting pretty thin. I mean, that is a stacked graveyard. So I have to imagine we're almost at the point where Reuben has successfully defeated every single card in Bernie's deck.
All right, Terminate is going to take care of the Spellskite on Bernie's.
Oh, and this is a great reason not
step.
to use Spell Snare on the Spellskite.
Oh, he's going to target himself with the Ancestral Vision. He's going to draw 2 lands and a Thought Scour. Counter Squall is going to be the draw for his turn. There's the Engineered Explosives that Bernie still has in his deck.
Yeah, I feel like Bernie can play this out, but he doesn't even have enough time to really clock Reuben.
Yeah.
So I think he may want to concede here just to preserve a little bit of the time on his clock.
Inventor's Fair is so good in this deck, just gaining life every turn.
Well, in a game that's going to go 30 turns,
Yeah, that's their game plan.
your
though.
Inventor's Fair can potentially gain 30 life. So it's one of those really, really slow cards that's persistent, and in a long game, it can add up to a lot.
All right, well, Reuben is going to take game 1 here with Lantern control over Bernie Wen on Grixis control. Let's take a look at the players' sideboards to see what type of options they might have. On Reuben's side, we have 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Spellskite, 2 Welding Jar, 2 Sun Droplet, 1 Collective Brutality, 1 Leyline of Sanctity, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Thoughtseize, 1 Ghost Quarter, 1 Golgari Charm, 1 Abrupt Decay. What do we think he's going to do?
So he has quite a few options. I don't know if he'll bring in all of these cards, but Spellskite and Welding Jar are both good ways for Reuben to protect his stuff. Grafdigger's Cage is something that he could bring in to hose Snapcaster Mage. Collective Brutality is also something that he could bring in. The targeted discard's pretty good against Bernie, and incidentally, killing a Snapcaster Mage is not too bad either. He could bring in Leyline of Sanctity if he's worried about discard. He could bring in Thoughtseize, again, good against the mostly spells deck. He could also bring in Pithing Needle as another way to deal with Creeping Tar Pit.
Now on Bernie's side, we have 3 Fulminator Mage, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Sun Droplet, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Dispel, 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Izzet Staticaster, 1 Damnation. What do we think Bernie wants?
So I think Bernie is lacking on interaction in the main deck, so he's probably going to bring in as much of this, or every card from his sideboard that he reasonably can. So that actually includes the 3 Fulminator Mages, the Engineer Explosives, and I wonder if there's any reason for him to bring in Dispel.
I don't think there's any reason for Dispel, but Surgical Extraction might actually have some applications.
Oh yeah, for sure. With Reuben milling himself so much, Reuben is likely, if Bernie can counter the first inning Snaring Bridge and then Surgical it, that would be a huge move for Bernie.
Or even destroy it, or
Yep.
anything of that nature.
Yeah, and again, Bernie's lacking on interaction, so anything that's reasonable, I think, is going to come in.
So both of these players are still live for top 8. It's likely that X3 is going to be the cutoff, so if they win this round, then they'll have a win in the next round into the top 8. And once we make it into the top 8, we have to figure out some way to see what quarterfinal match we're going to watch.
If only there were a way.
Well, good news there is. You can join the feature match area by subscribing to the SCG Live Twitch channel, twitch.tv/SCG Live. You get to decide the quarterfinals, you get custom emoticons and a badge, and it's only $4.99 a month. So please, if you would like to vote and have your voice heard on which quarterfinal match we actually cover, join the feature match area today, twitch.tv/SCG Live.
And you can also join for free if you have Twitch Prime. We have the technology, you have the power. All right, so with time being a little low on the clock, both of these players have made the generous agreement to actually play with their hands revealed, if a Thoughtseize has been cast and players actually know what is in each other's hand. This is just a nice way to shortcut things so that you don't spend a lot of time writing things on a piece of paper and then having to keep track of that, crossing things out as it gets played.
Especially once Lantern of Insight hits the battlefield.
Right.
Both players basically know what is in each other's hands from that point on.
You can spend a lot of time just on the mechanics of this matchup. Both of these decks win very slowly, and for Bernie's sake, he really wants things to go as fast as possible. If we're not able to finish the second game, and we did just play a 25-minute game 1, there's no reason why we wouldn't potentially play a 25-minute game 2. Bernie's going to be really short on time, and he needs to win too.
I wonder if we see just a good old Ambush Viper from Snapcaster Mage here.
Oh yeah, I would love an Ambush Viper. Yep, for sure.
All right, looks like Bernie is deliberating his hand. He's going to keep it. So will Reuben Bresler. We're off to the races. Bernie Wen is on the play for a game 2 here. Grixis control versus Lantern control. He's going to fall down to 17, using the Scalding Tarn to go find a Steam Vents is my guess. Or a Watery Grave. Blooming Marsh for Reuben Bresler is going to bring along with it a Thoughtseize.
And we see 2 Fulminator Mages, so certainly scraping the bottom of the barrel for interactive cards, but it is definitely a path to victory that can slow Reuben down quite a bit.
2 Fulminator Mage, 1 Tasker of the Golden Fang, a Cryptic Command, and an Engineered Explosive, so Bernie doesn't actually have a second land. Reuben is going to take the Engineered Explosives out of his hand. He'll fall down to 18.
Come on, dealer, one time. Oh, and he gets it!
And there's an island for Bernie.
Baller! Bernie knows how to top deck.
Pass the turn back to Reuben.
All right, I think Bernie is going to be a massive favorite in that matchup. If he can top deck like that in these, high pressure scenarios, he's going to be smooth sailing from here on.
All right, we've got a Ghost Quarter for Reuben and another Thoughtseize. Reuben's going to fall down to 16. Let's see what he takes. He's going to take the Tasker or the Golden Fang and pass the turn back to Bernie.
Imagine Bernie just top decks another land here.
Lantern of Insight. Not another land.
Not another land. Another Fulminator, but...
Well, there's
so
a
close.
land. Bernie's going to try and cover it up. Maybe Reuben will forget that there's a land there and not mill him.
And the reason that Bernie has that thing there, whatever it is, looks like a divider.
Vision.
It's to remind him of Ancestral Vision. A lot of people put a die or something else on top of their library so that they remember that they have something to do during their upkeep before they draw for their turn. We haven't mentioned this, but Bernie's got some nice lands.
He does.
Those look like black bordered, I don't know, alpha or beta. Maybe they're foreign revised.
Black Border 4th edition. All right, so we're going to get a Ghost Quarter on the Watery Grave. Bernie's going to go get a basic, and Reuben here is hoping that there's not another land on top of Bernie's deck. With that Ghoul Collar Bell coming up for next turn, if Reuben can fade a land here, he can try and slide into a very controlling position over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Reuben fired off a Ghost Quarter there, knowing that Bernie does play a fair amount of basics, but I guess it just means that Reuben just didn't really have anything else better to do that turn.
All right, he's got an Inventor's Fair and that Ghoul Collar Bell.
And I feel like Reuben probably wants to use the Ghoul Collar Bell, but before his the end of Bernie's turn, because Reuben probably doesn't want to draw that Mox Opal. So he's going to potentially be facing this Ancestral and Serum Visions as things that can draw. So Reuben's going to have a lot of options for when exactly to use his Ghoul Collar spell.
Well, there are a lot of lands that were drawn there by Bernie, which bodes well for him in his hand of Fulminator Mages.
Magic players in the Legacy Classic. That is time in the round. Magic player, please finish your turn. And then you should take 5 additional turns after that. Again, players in the Legacy.
And now the Fulminators are going to start hitting the board, and this is something that can be pretty annoying for Reuben. Granted, he will have some control over the top of his deck, and his deck is generally, cards between 1 and 3 mana, so these Fulminator Mages aren't going to be backbreaking. The other option for Bernie is he can just attack with them for 2, and then, as soon as they get blocked by something like a Ensnaring Bridge, then he'll be able to cash them in you know, for the stone rain that they are.
All right, well, we're going to get
Wow.
a double opaled Abrupt Decay on this Fulminator Mage. Bernie's going to use it on the Inventor's Fair.
So kind of a rough situation for Reuben. He's trying to make the best of it. He doesn't really want to take 2 a bunch of times, and you know, with the Academy Ruins, he can potentially redraw a few things if he wants, but
Well, there is a Glimmer Void for Reuben.
kind of a weird game.
He's going to Ghoul Caller's Bell. In response, Bernie will Thought Scour Reuben.
And this game is going a lot better for Bernie. He's got a little bit of pressure. He's got his mana developed. He's going to potentially have a Cryptic Command online if he can draw another land. And it looks like he's going to be able to do just that right now. Ooh, Kolaghan's Command, and that's a great one. And it looks like Reuben is thinking if he wants to activate
His Lantern of Insight.
before Bernie's able to draw that Kolaghan's Command, because it is one of the standout cards in the matchup. And Bernie can actually, you know, would have a couple different options with his Kolaghan's Command. He could kill one of Reuben's artifacts and return one of the Fulminator Mages, you know, from his graveyard back to his hand. Bernie could also wait for Reuben to draw, and then at the end of his draw step, make him discard whatever he drew and destroy an artifact. And Bernie would know what Reuben was drawing when he did that because of the Lantern of Insight, although Lantern of Insight is gone for now.
All right, well, Bernie is going to draw a card from the Serum Visions and then scry 2 cards. He's going to attack for 2, knock Reuben down to 15. He also has a Scalding Tarn. He's going to pass the turn back. Reuben's going to use Academy Ruins to put Lantern of Insight back on top of his deck and recast it. Ghoul Caller's Spell is going to mill them both for 1. Ooh, and Bernie's going to pick up a Cryptic Command.
Yeah, Cryptic Command is pretty good.
Fulminator Mage is going to attack Reuben down to 13. Bernie's going to shock down to 13.
And I believe Bernie has, I mean, between the Snapcaster Mage, a little bit of burn, a Cryptic Command, Bernie's looking in very good shape to take this game relatively quickly. Reuben's going to be able to spin his wheels for a while, but Bernie kind of has the answers for the next couple things that Reuben can do.
Yeah, there is a Lightning Bolt and a Snapcaster Lightning Bolt.
A nice big increase to the clock.
Bernie just drew a card that wasn't revealed. They are both playing fairly quickly to try and end this game.
Yep.
The bolt was flashed back.
And if Bernie wants to milk a little more use out of the Snapcaster Mage, he could even do something like end of turn, Cryptic Command, bounce my Snapcaster, draw a card. But Bernie just shows him the bolt. Reuben knows that it's about over, and they're on to the next game.
Reuben will scoop that one up. Bernie Wynn is going to take game 2 here in this lightning fast match between Grixis Control and Lantern Control. Taking a look at the sideboards, it looks like
Lightning fast match. That is some serious sarcasm, dear sir.
I meant that game was lightning fast. They're playing fast. Now we saw Fulminator Mages from Bernie. Do you think he brought in those surgical extractions?
I think so.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a quick second here to talk about the new Commander decks that just came out, Commander 2016 edition. You can get decks and sets of 5 along with a new Commander versus playmats. They were released yesterday. Go to StarCityGames.com/Commander 2016 to get yours.
So what I want to see from Bernie this game is pretty similar to what we saw in that most recent game that we saw him win. He didn't have particularly powerful attackers, but he was able to just keep the path clear, keep an ensnaring bridge off the board, and use a little bit of burn to speed up his clock and take Reuben down while Reuben was kind of spinning his wheels and getting his shop set up. What I want to see from Reuben is a little more similar to what I saw in game 1, where he just had, more artifacts on the board. He had some ensnaring bridges, and his deck was just firing on more cylinders. That game that we saw Reuben, he ended up having to sacrifice a lot of card advantage. He cast that Abrupt Decay at the cost of a Mox Opal, and the target of the Abrupt Decay was a Fulminator Mage that was still able to kill one of Reuben's lands in response. So Reuben was definitely operating on fewer resources than Bernie was, and hopefully Reuben can find a line that basically preserves his resources a little bit more so that he has more of them to use.
Well, Reuben is going to be on the play here for game 3 between Reuben Bresler on Lantern control and Bernie Wen on Grixis control. Looks like they're playing very fast, and a card flipped over as Bernie grabbed it from his deck.
Yeah, it looks like Bernie probably drew his hand and then knocked the top card off of his library that he would have drawn.
Looks like he picked up half of his deck to draw his hand and knocked a card off the bottom of it. Just going to be a warning for looking at extra cards. Be a little careful. Even when you're playing fast, he's just going to reshuffle his deck.
This is one of the most nerve-wracking situations, especially in the feature match areas, when you know you and your opponent can't win the game particularly quickly, and you're starting to run out of time. If we were looking at an Infect Mirror, 13 minutes would be plenty of time to finish a 3-game set.
And they're just on the cusp where X3-1 is likely to not top 8 this event.
Right, exactly. We did have a big event. It was very competitive. We had a clean cut at 7-2, and you're going to need a very good record to make it into the top 8.
All right, so it looks like Reuben is going to mulligan his hand. Bernie, I believe, is going to keep his.
And I would assume that Reuben would have to have a pretty bad hand to mulligan. It seems like with the way his deck is set up, he only needs a couple lands and a couple spells to have a keepable hand. He might be trying to, get a hand that's a little faster by having a discard spell or some sort of protection against removal, like a Spellskite or a Welding Jar, so that he can essentially blank the first removal spell that Bernie casts.
All right, well, Reuben is going to go down to 5, and it looks like they did get an extension for a couple of minutes from that ruling while they're figuring out what to do while he flipped the card over while shuffling.
The other thing,
Reuben is going down to 5, and that is not going to bode well.
Yeah, the other thing about Reuben mulliganing is he may be trying to mulligan to a hand that looks like it can win faster. He may have higher standards on what hands he keeps because the clock is an issue. And this is something that you'll see a lot of great players do, is when they say, all right, this is a fine hand if I had 20 minutes for this game, but I don't have 20 minutes, I'm going to have to mulligan it because a draw is as good as a loss.
Oh, well, Reuben is going to keep his 5. He's going to scry to the bottom. All right, we have a Glimmer Void and a Mox Opal, along with an Inquisition. That's going to reveal Polluted Delta, Watery Grave Island, 2 Serum Visions, and a Counter Squall. It's a good reactive hand for Bernie. Maybe he can draw into something a little more proactive with those Serum Visions. Something like an early Tassiger is what Bernie's
Wow, and that's a
likely looking
great
for.
top deck, Ancestral Visions. They don't have a lot of time for this matchup, but they certainly have 5 turns.
All right, well, Reuben is going to draw a card, pass the turn without playing his second land. Bernie's going to fetch with his Polluted Delta, fall down to 19, might go 17.
Wow, and imagine Bernie finds some way to kill that Mox Opal before Reuben is able to play another artifact. That is definitely one of the dangers of playing Glimmer Void. We saw it in one of the previous Affinity games. It can be a little bit of a liability when you're operating on very few resources. If you lose all your artifacts, you're going to lose your Glimmer Void too.
All right, Bernie is going to Serum Visions, and then Serum Visions again. He scried the first 2 to the bottom. See where he puts these. Ooh, and there is a Tassiger. It's going to top both of them.
So Tassiger is a great top deck because it'll establish a clock. It's basically Bernie's fastest clock.
And here's a second Glimmer Void for Reuben Bresler and a Spellskite. Bernie's going to draw a card for his turn. It looks like he has a Kolaghan's Command too.
Wow. That said, Reuben did draw a second land, which comically enough was another Glimmer Void, but you know, he was able to play another artifact. So if Reuben can start playing some artifacts, he's going to be okay. But if Bernie's able to, you know, take down all the artifacts that Reuben has in play, losing both those Glimmer Voids is going to be a huge loss from Reuben. This game is actually looking pretty good for Bernie. He's going to be able to establish a clock, and he's got some good disruption.
He's just going to pass the turn. Another Glimmer Void for Reuben.
Wow.
And just a Glint Nest Crane. He's going to find a Lantern of Insight.
And this is a pretty nice pickup for Reuben simply because it's a 1-mana artifact.
And Bernie does have a Counter Squall that's going to take care of it.
And Bernie held up his mana specifically. He wanted to cash in that Counter Squall if possible. If he could, you know, being able to counter one of Reuben's artifacts means that Bernie is very close to just answering the artifacts on the board.
Looks like we've got a Watery Grave. He's going to shock himself down to 12.
And if Bernie can do something like cast Kolaghan's Command and Tassiger on this turn, it's going to be a huge swing.
All right, so Bernie will exile his graveyard and cast Tassiger, and we're going to get a Kolaghan's Command here.
Yeah, and I would expect kill the Spellskite and make Reuben discard a card.
All right, and Reuben is going to discard his Abrupt Decay. Got a Codex Shredder.
Hey, that's great. It's an artifact. Reuben just wants to draw artifacts. He's got a lot to contend with. He's got to worry about just land, Snapcaster Mage to flash back that Kolaghan's Command, or Bernie potentially drawing another one. And that Tassiger is going to start clocking Reuben.
Tassiger is going to attack Reuben, and that's going to knock him down to 14. Reuben will Codex Shredder himself. Looks like he finds a swamp. He's going to pass the turn. Bernie does have a Lightning Bolt and a Snapcaster Mage in his hand.
Yeah, I like Bolt, Snap Bolt here quite a bit.
He's going to bolt the Glint Nest Crane.
He wants to bolt the Crane because it is a 1/3, so it would profitably block the Snapcaster Mage, yeah. So we were really worried about the clock, but this draw is great for Bernie. This is exactly what he needs.
Well, Bernie here is just going to Snap Bolt Reuben, which will knock him down to 11. And then the attack for 6 will knock him down to 5, and he already has a Kolaghan's Command. If he just draws another Lightning Bolt, he could end this game this turn.
I think another Snapcaster Mage would do it too.
He's just going to attack for 6.
Still a 1-turn clock. Reuben needs an Ensnaring Bridge right now.
Looks like he has a Snapcaster Mage, which could be a Kolaghan's Command. We might even see him just use it here in Reuben's draw step to make him discard a card and deal 2 damage.
I would like that very much. You want to just make it so that Reuben can't top deck something.
Oh, he's actually just going to Snap Counter Squall. And Bernie Wynn is going to take this match 2-1 over Reuben Bresler. They both played very quickly. I feel like they played respectfully for each other's time.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Bernie Wynn is going to take this 2-1 over Lantern Control, move on to 11-3 with his Grixis Control deck. He might be in a spot where he has a win in the next round.
Yeah, for sure. That would be exciting to see that Grixis Control deck in the top 8. And in particular, I really liked seeing the good sportsmanship there. Both players playing with their hands revealed when the information was known between the two of them. You know, it's just like one of the nice things about the Magic community. Everyone's just awesome.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to Bernie Nguyen. Good luck next round. We're going to take a quick break here as we get ready for round 15 of 15. Once we have the standings and the pairings, we'll be able to see which matches will be